Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Cancer, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of February. I hope you are well. I'm using the, what am I using here? The Night Sun Tarot for you today, which very much correlates with the meditation that I had before I started the reading because it was quite intense, and this deck doesn't tend to come out when we're having a bog standard month. So, interesting. A bit of housekeeping before we begin. If the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's the first link in the description box. The second link in the description box is to the 6-month overviews that I've done for each of the signs. They run from January to June, rather, 2023. So if you're interested in finding out what that time frame holds in store for you, do feel free to check that out. And the third link is to my private community over on Circle, the Order of the Phoenix. You can watch all extended content there, and there's a really fabulous group of people. We hang out a lot over there, so if you're interested in that, you know what to do. Third link in the description box. Let's have a look and see what's going on with you, Cancer. Can I have 3 cards for Cancer, please? First card is the 9 of Swords, but I like it in the Night Sun, whatever I'm using here. Current energy, please. We have the 7 of Swords and the Queen of Cups. Queen of Cups obviously being the Cancer card. And let's have one more card that's coming towards Cancer. We have the Page of Swords. I think it's safe to say that there's a big shift coming up. I felt this for all of the signs, actually. There is a really big shift coming up for everyone. And it may or may not have something to do with this forward motion that we have of the planets, which rather unusually is going on for 3 months, I think, solidly. We're about, maybe it's a week into it or something like that. Everybody's changing. At least, in my opinion, everyone who is sensitive is changing before changes are thrust upon them. And that looks to me like it's happening very end of March, April, May sort of time. So, the shift for you definitely feels like a perceptual one. It's an internal one, and obviously that's where these things have to start. It's very much about tweaking the workings of your mind, though. I mean, let's get some clarifiers out on the table and then we'll really get into it. How about the 9 of Swords? We have the Emperor with, whatever that is, the 2 of Swords. Okay. Tell me about the 7 of it's not 7 of Swords and the Queen of Cups. We have the 4 of Swords. We have the 4 of Wands, that's double 4. And we have the 2 of Wands in reverse and the 5 of Swords in reverse. What about this Page of Swords, please? 9 of Swords in reverse. Wonderful. And one more for the Page of Swords, please. 4 of Cups. That 4 of Cups is never too far away from you, Cancer, and I think that's an important thing to note in the first instance. It is somewhat of an energy that haunts you. It's so funny. I was doing a personal reading yesterday, and the person concerned had a Cancer ascendant, which they felt had rather led them astray in their youth, and I really connected with that as an idea because some of you might know my Venus is in Cancer. And I have to say, for the longest time, it's been the part of my chart that's really made me like hiss like a cat at it, because it seems to have been the one that was most responsible for all of the things that felt very difficult to me during the course of my life, as I have experienced it so far. But one of the things that I had to point out to this person that I was doing the personal reading for, off the back of my own experience, was, although it was the placement that has made me the most uncomfortable, it has been responsible, I guess, if you will, for the most pain in my life. It has also been the greatest teacher. And I feel a similar sort of energy from this 4 of Cups here. Now, I can't even think off the top of my head if this is a Cancerian card. It is a Cancerian card. 4 of Cups. Just last decan of Cancer, I think, if I'm reading that correctly. It's never far away. Anyway, this is the point. And I wonder if it is everything that is inside that card for you represents your growth. You know, I'm often saying, I think it's a quote from Carl Jung, the tools that you need to grow are in the places that you least want to look. And certainly in my natal chart, that Venus in Cancer felt to me like the weak link in the chain. Has this energy here been for you the weak link in the chain that actually turns out to be somewhat of a superpower long term? I think so. I think it's a sign. It is a sign that you need to grow into, I think, because it's so sensitive and it's so easily damaged early on. It's, you know, quite like all of the water signs in that respect, actually. Nevertheless, let's have a look at what's going on here. Is we got this Nine of Swords, and like I said, I actually really like this Nine of Swords. I'll just take a second to look at that. The camera focuses on it properly. We have the 9 swords that we're accustomed to seeing, but they're all jammed into the soil. And the soil is bleeding. I don't know if you caught that detail there. The soil is bleeding. It's not been a comfortable journey. But in the best tradition of all things, the sun is shining. Again, the sun still shines, in fact. And the weeds are growing up through the swords. And it feels to me like that flower represents hope. It's that the indomitable spirit of humanity, right? That allows hope to flourish even when it feels like there is none. It feels like where there was wounding and where there was perhaps overthinking and insomnia and all of the other things that we associate with the Nine of Swords, here it's coming to a place now where we are becoming more comfortable with it. Now, not comfortable as in comfort zone or any of the other, you know, pejorative terms that we might use to describe a feeling of stasis, but more a kind of growing into oneself, right? And understanding that, yes, sometimes one has fears and sometimes one has doubts and sometimes things are really fucking hard, but that nevertheless we always triumph, we always come through, even if it is a little bit battered, even if it is a little bit, you know, scarred, we nevertheless persist, because hope eventually returns. And this being in the recent past part of your reading here, it seems like it's a coming to terms with energy more than anything else. And with this Emperor and the Two of Swords down there, we've got this sense of, despite everything, and maybe it's even in spite of everything, and I would actually posit probably because of everything, what is coming through is a true warrior. What is coming through is someone who is not prepared to be a victim in any sense anymore. You know, one of the things that I like about the Emperor card here, I'll just move that out of the way, is, you know, we've got all of the finery that is associated with someone of his position, right? We've got this, you know, fancy red robe, and he's sitting on his throne, looking very impressive with his gold and whatnot. But underneath that, we've got armor. Now, this is not to say that an armoured heart is a useful thing moving forwards, but it speaks to resilience and perseverance. It talks to the idea that we can fight when we need to, but we do not approach life as if it is a fight, you know. And by fight, what I mean is things like standing up for oneself and you know, the ethical use of anger and aggression, because I do believe very strongly that there are ethical utilities for these things. But look here, we have the Two of Swords, and I wonder if what has begun to dawn, and I think it's probably been dawning for quite a long time, but it's getting to a place now where you are feeling it, is just to what extent it has been the perceptions of things that have held you back rather than the reality of the situation. You know, whenever we get the Nine of Swords, whether it's in the Night Sun or a different card altogether, we've got this perceptual angle always being implied with it, in so much as maybe things aren't quite as bad as we think they are. You know, maybe we are catastrophizing, maybe we are looking for reasons why we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. You know, maybe we're looking for reasons why we can't possibly be as powerful as we fear we might be. And I have this kind of arbitrary rule when it comes to the tarot. It is fairly arbitrary, but for the most part, it's carried across all of the decks that I own, that swords down are bad and swords up are good, right? Let's see here. I'll just use this as an example, right? These two cards here are actually really good for this, right? We've got a sword down here, which is not necessarily a good thing, right? But think about, let's just start from the beginning. Think about the Ace of Swords, right? Always up. Think about the entire sword suit, the hierarchy of the swords, from the page through to the king. The swords are always up. What we're dealing with is truth and reason and logic and rationality, right? All of those good things. Sometimes even the binary states that those things imply. And in the Waite-Smith, the only card that doesn't have its swords either up or down is the Nine of Swords. It is about perception. You know, the perceptions that you have about the utility of swords will decide whether you see this as a threat or you see this as an interesting wall adornment, right? Now, if we're to apply my arbitrary rule to the swords, then what we've got here is a situation that is every bit as bad as you thought it was. We're talking about real past trauma. We're talking about things that have really, truly been a shock to your sensibilities, whether it's by humiliation, betrayal, the way that you have allowed your mind to wind yourself up into, you know, into a state about whatever. You know, things have been really hard. Things have been really difficult. But hope springs eternal. And here we are. And these two cards here together speak to me more of a sense of understanding that a lot of this has been caused by not paying attention to your emotions in a healthy way, not paying attention to your intuition in a healthy way. You know, we joke about it almost every month, you know, the difference between red flags as everybody else understands them and that pretty red bunting that we saw when we were skipping gleefully down the road, you know, inputting into a situation all of the things that we wanted to see rather than those that actually existed. I speak as someone who has a considerable trail of pretty red bunting in her wake. Having completely ignored all of it, you know, I was just aimlessly shuffling the cards here. We've got the moon at the bottom of the deck, right? It's about a willingness to engage with the deepest part of you, take responsibility for, you know, the things, the mistakes that we have made, but ultimately looking at it more from a perspective of where could I go from now? And you're not the only sign that's had this message coming through. What could be possible? If I stopped standing in my way, if I stopped allowing my mind to interfere with all of this, and I came from the place of what I really want at my core, what could I achieve? Because in your current energy, well, we've got that Queen of Cups there, which is you. So we already have, you know, authentic expressions of Cancer being stamped all over this reading. We have the Seven of Swords. There's an emboldenment about the things that you are considering in the here and now. And I think these are absolutely related to changes. Now, we've got this Ten of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck. It's sitting there, sitting pretty, you know. It represents our security and our stability and the things that we have worked a long time to create for ourselves. In some ways, you know, it can talk about your literal home. It can talk about your business. It can talk about the things that you do to earn money. But in a broader sense, it's like it could even represent your comfort zone. We see how the bull is sitting there. It looks quite, actually check that out. Like, it looks quite comfy, but it's right next to a stone wall, and it's found itself the only patch of grass in amongst all of the stone. And maybe it's convinced itself that this is a really good place for it to hang out because there's grass here. Look at that, there's grass. It's great. But maybe the thing that is absent from the bull's thinking here is that rather than a patch of grass that is just somewhat bigger than it is, what the bull should be looking for is a field. And maybe not just one field, but maybe many fields. Because where it is right now will sustain it for a while, but it will come a point when all of that grass is grown, and then what does it do? to take some sort of leap, some sort of risk that puts us in a place where we are able to more fully meet our own needs. Now, this is almost certainly got its basis in the emotional for you as a water sign. You know, you are coming from a place where your emotions really must be taken care of first, literally before anything else. But we've got these two cards numbered 4 down here, and these are both foundational cards, right? The number 4 is a foundational card. Imagine it as a square, if you will. You can use that to build lots of things on top of. But what we've got here is a state of mental peace, you know, some element of mental healing, almost. It follows on from the 3 of Swords. And so it is a card of kind of processing and adjusting oneself to a new paradigm, one where the preceding 3 of Swords has put us in a place where, you know, things aren't quite what we thought they were. And then we have this desire, I think, to create a new foundation for ourselves. That's what the 4 of Wands talks about. It talks about home, it talks about joy, it talks about celebration. I often say, if you think of, you know, the top 3 or 4 people that you would get in touch with if you know, had some really amazing news, like you won the lottery or you got the job you were after, you know, those sorts of things. But also correspondingly, those 3 or 4 people that you would call if your life had literally gone to rack and ruin, who would be the people that you trusted to share that information with you, to comfort you, to make you feel better about it, okay? To remind you that you're worthy even though you had failed in some way. That whole set of circumstances there very much encapsulates my feeling of the 4 of Wands. But more than that, it is the act of creating something new. It isn't just what is, it is what is becoming. And I think that this is important because, like I said, that this risk-taking card, I think it's somewhat of a calculated risk, is pushing you towards some sort of change, something that is definitely taking you out of your comfort zone. And it could be that you've realised that you've outgrown something, that's possible, but it could be the more long-term consequences of staying where you are, because maybe a little light bulb has just gone on in this bull's head and he's gone, oh shit, if I stay here eating grass at the rate that I do, before too much longer, I will have nothing. And these 2 cards are very, very interesting in light of that. I'm really quite intrigued by the fact that they've come up in the reverse, because this 2 of Wands talks about a crossroads. And we often think about the crossroads, and it's an internal card, right? So it's an internal proposition that we've got here. And it is, I can choose to go this way, or I can choose to go that way. And which way am I going to go? And we walk through the mental consequences of going in either direction and see if that's actually where we want to end up, before then embarking on the 3 of Wands, which would be our direction of travel. Now, the interesting thing for me about this being in reverse is it feels like what is happening to you isn't something that you necessarily have a choice over. And not in a way that is disempowering, but more like a situation where you asked for evidence for X, Y, Z, well, for whatever thing, right? You give me some concrete evidence for something, and then let me see what I think. And you've been presented with concrete evidence, and suddenly you're in a position whereby to do anything other than move forwards, to do anything other than take the calculated risk, would be folly, you know? It's like, well, I asked for the evidence, and here's all the evidence, and in light of all the evidence that I have received, I can't possibly stay where I am. I also can't possibly take that road, because it's now glaringly apparent that this is the road that I need to go down. The 5 of Swords in reverse, it feels like it's a confirmation of that kind of energy there, because the 5 of Swords in the upright is a very unstable energy. It's mentally unstable, not you know, about to get yourself sectioned or anything like that. More like those kind of cognitive loops that we get stuck in, where we're repeating mental patterns. You know, we can't see that we're not thinking about something in the right way because we're using our brain to do the thinking, and it doesn't think in the right way. We can talk about other things like Pyrrhic victories, or, you know, any kind of self-sabotage, really. I guess that kind of goes with Pyrrhic victory. But we can also see it talking about a certain amount of conflict. It being swords, it could be you coming to loggerheads with someone about something, or even getting to this point where the internal conflict that has been this battle in your mind for the longest time is now resolved, because that's what this is talking about. This is a resolution right here to some sort of issue, and a stabilization that occurs as a result, because now these two bits of you are not in conflict. I mean, like I said, it could be people outside of you you're no longer in conflict with. I mean, it could be that you are also choosing not to pay attention to what other people are saying moving forwards, and that would be a huge thing for you, Cancer. But what I'm feeling here is an incredible sense of determination to change something that has been as it is for a very long time. 10 of Pentacles again. Now, whether you know what this is or whether you are not sure, but it's just a feeling that is starting to surface that things need to be adjusted in some sort of way, I'm not sure. But the adjustment and the need for adjustment is coming from the changes that are happening within. Now, I always say, like, your external world is a reflection of your internal world. And so if you get to a point where you're starting to feel like the things that at one point you really wanted more than anything else, and that you now hold, are no longer giving you what it was that you thought that you needed at the time where you started wishing for them, then you've outgrown that thing and it's time to move on. That's how it feels to me. So sorry about the sun. I can't see anything at the moment. And we've got here the Page of Swords. We've got a completely different way of thinking, right? We're taking something that already exists and we're changing the way that we think about it. To that end, I'm actually really rather overjoyed that both the Five of Swords and the Nine of Swords have shown up here. Not least because in order for these cards to show up in their reversed state, as they are here, the necessary corollary of that for me is that at some preceding point, they must have shown up in their upright. Because the only way that you stabilize that energy, right, is for it to be there in the first place. And then you go, right, well, actually, I'm not going to think like that anymore. I'm not going to allow myself to be concerned or worried or have my sleep disturbed any longer. I'm not going to be anxious about this thing anymore. And I wonder if it comes down to this idea of, I'm kind of loosely calling it evidence. It could be some information that's come to you, or it could just be the way that you have sat with yourself and recognized that you are no longer resonating at the same frequency as everything that is around you. And it's like, well, I'm not terribly comfortable being here anymore. I think it's time for me to move on. That Four of Cups is really interesting because, like I said, it's never too far away from you, Cancer. It's been showing up quite a lot recently. And I wonder if what we've got coming in for you in February is a succession of different situations that at any other point other than now would have triggered off this Four of Cups feeling in you. Right, this card deals with rejection, the consequences of rejection, perhaps the ways that we reject other people without even really considering that, sometimes our inability to reject people because of a need to manage their perceptions of us. Talking about people pleasing and stuff like that. But it can also talk about boredom, and it can talk about apathy. Now, if it's one thing that we can't say about the cards that are appearing here is that you seem in any way apathetic to your direction moving forwards. It's quite the reverse. You seem to be more engaged with it than you have been for a long time. There's this here. The perception has changed, and the things that worried you do not worry you anymore. Let's get some more cards out here. So, we have the Two of Wands with the Seven of Cups. And the Six of Wands. This is fascinating. At least because we've got the Seven of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck, and I feel feel like that very much confirms what I was saying about this sense of movement being required, right? Just not being here. It's a card that talks about a somewhat dissatisfactory environment, dissatisfactory circumstances. We are not getting what we wanted out of this. But this Two of Wands, Seven of Cups, and then the Six of Wands. This being here, victory. And this being the same card as this one, and this one being the same card as this one. It's talking to the emotional confusion and sometimes the emotional illusion that we all labour under sometimes. And I think what has felt like a fog, you know, this endless cycle of really, really wanting something and then getting it and it not being as good as we thought it was, right? This constant sense of reaching for something else because we are dissatisfied with what we have, being replaced with some sense of resolve to not only go after the things that we want, but also to enjoy them and appreciate them as they are there. You know, this card here talks about victory, it talks about winning. But I mean, these two cards here feel to me like an understanding that the confusion is almost a choice. Which makes me wonder if the confusion has come from the difference between what you want, what you think you want, and what you think you have, versus a reality that has been staring you in the face for really quite a long time. We're back to this idea of the red flags. Right? No red flags, just pretty red bunting everywhere. Isn't it delightful? You know, the bunting's starting to mean something to you now. And so if you only get confused at the times where you wander down a road looking at the bunting and going, well, this is wonderful, this is everything that I wanted, you know, and you get to the end of that road and maybe you turn left, and from there you just seem to have entered some sort of hideous fucking nightmare, and you're like, this isn't what I wanted, this isn't what it, this isn't it, this isn't good. Then understanding that you could have, at the point where you entered that first road, gone, shit, no, there's bunting here, I've seen this before. Might not be quite as crimson as the last time, but that just might be the light shining in at this point, you know, the sunlight's just making it look a little bit pink instead of red. I think what I might do is go that way instead. Then you're putting yourself in a really powerful position. What I was saying at the beginning there about the energy of this card, shifting from something that is a curse, at least perceptually, into a gift, opens you up to the idea that not only should you come in, up against any of these kind of situations again in the future, you know what to do, and it's something different to what your standard automatic response would be. But it becomes then the seat of your power, Cancer. And we've got this Page of Swords here, and he's kind of holding his hand up to his mouth like this, and it really does feel like something's just occurred to him. And in the month of February, it feels to me that what occurs to you is, holy shit, I could do all sorts of things. I could do this, I could do that, I could do the other. It's like the cogs are beginning to whir in your brain. Now, that in and of itself would be a wonderful thing, but it's what's going on underneath that that I find really, really fascinating. Because it's about removal of emotional blocks, right? The things that stopped you doing this or that or the other, you know, the things that had you acting from this state of conditioned response to other people's emotions, other people's prejudices, I mean, other people's fucking sense of entitlement, and your corresponding capitulation to that, all starting to fall behind you now, like fall by the wayside. There's this huge emotional shift in you that sees you centering yourself in a really, really healthy way, in a way that you haven't done before, that then is causing the removal of these blocks, which is having your mind processing information differently. which feels fucking wonderful. I mean, this is a really powerful month for you, in so much as feeling personally empowered to make the changes that you're already kind of vaguely visualizing. Yeah, maybe you're getting to the daydream point with this. But like I said right at the beginning, we have 3 months where all the planets are direct. There is nothing standing in the way except ourselves at this point. So any work that we do that removes the blocks, even if it's just holistic and it's just happening, I mean, there's the energy working on us right now, right? It's preparing us for something. And for you, like I said, it feels like it's preparing you to make some sort of shift that 6 months ago you would not have considered doing. And it was possibly because this right here felt much more attractive than it does right now, which is very, very interesting indeed. So I'm going to go over to Vimeo now. We're going to look at February specifically and see what that has going on in it. If you would like to join me, you're very, very welcome. If not, I would just, this for me feels like a month where you roll with whatever comes up and dismiss nothing out of hand. Even if it's a feeling that comes up from somewhere and you have no place to put it, you're like, where the fuck is this feeling? It feels to me like a lot of things are going to make sense over the course of this month. But the important thing is that you pay attention to the little things, the personal little things, reactions to people, reactions to circumstances, little thoughts that drop into your head while you're doing the washing up or having a bath or something like that. Because it feels like things are coming together under the surface much more rapidly than it appears on the surface. But once you get to the point where you've made a decision about something, it feels like everything's going to pick up very, very quickly. There will be some very swift moves by you. And I think that that is magnificent. So, like I said, I'm going to leave it there. I can't see you, so I'm hoping you can see me. The sun's just shining directly on everything. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I will see you soon.